turn this baby on.
The side's got a little on-off thing.
Alright, so obviously what are we gonna talk about? You guys should have a pretty good idea by now, right? Women in FFA. So Mr. Schaefer and I kind of talked, and this is the 50th year that women have been allowed to join FFA, so we thought it'd be kind of a quick little fun lesson to go through, and it was a big thing. It's an important thing for FFA today, so it's relevant. So our objectives for today, I want you guys to be able to learn the history of women in FFA, because I think sometimes it goes a little under the radar. And then I want you guys to be able to explain the impact the women have made on FFA through the years. To start, we talked a little bit on the Kahoot about how they haven't been able to always join officially to the National FFA, but there was ways around it. So one of the ways was Sweethearts, which we'll talk about in a minute. But there was a few like shady ways that they got around it. And the first way that I read about, I didn't know about this until like 2 days ago. Girls would go with the advisors, because on a state and local level, a lot of instructors wanted there to be girls in their chapters. They knew they could be beneficial. So girls would go to like camps and meetings and all sorts of things under the impression that they were the advisor's niece or the advisor's daughter, and pretend, and you can't really say, well, you can't have you need to take your niece home if you're the advisor. So they got away with that. And then, like I said, some states and local chapters, they wanted women in it, so it wasn't a fight. It was on the national level, but it was an issue. And then Sweethearts. So does anybody got an idea of what Sweethearts are? Yeah.
Like the competition where they do like all the stuff for like Museum, basically, like so they like kind of like post it and stuff.
Right. Yep. So you are the first recipient of a Tootsie Roll. So exactly. So Sweethearts there was one Sweetheart per chapter. They would let them come in. It was pretty much the only option to really, truly be a part of a chapter as a female before 1969. They think it roughly came around in the 1930s. They're not really sure where the position started. Somebody somewhere was like, let's have a Sweetheart, and then it grew. But they don't know for sure. So they say right around the 30s probably is when we started to see Sweethearts become a thing. But we didn't see Sweethearts wearing their jackets until 49. Sweethearts wore a white jacket. It was the same as the boys' blue ones, but it was white. And it just was like their crown. It was what signified them as Sweethearts. And we didn't see that until 1949 when that was made available. So a lot of states actually wanted Sweethearts once it became a thing. Anybody got any ideas? You guys tell me why maybe they would want to have a single girl in their chapter? Yeah?
Women are a lot smarter sometimes when it comes to like knowing things, knowing how to do things.
So they didn't explicitly say that, but I think that they wanted some female influence. But another thing is that women back, especially during like the 40s and 50s, it was not really very cool for guys to cuss in front of girls, to dress sloppy. I mean, your goal was to be as professional and nice around women as possible. So chapters thought that, hey, if we have a pretty little girl that sits in our chapter with us and is keeping boys in tip-top shape and dressing nice and staying cleaned up, then I can't see a problem with it. So that's what they did. They started bringing in a girl. And basically, the only way that they ran for it was the boys would say, well, I guess the members of the chapter, which had to be boys, would say, we want this girl, and then they'd vote on it. So basically, they'd get nominated, and they'd get voted on it, and it was basically a popularity contest. But at that point, that's how they had one. popularity for Sweethearts continued to grow and grow and grow until the 60s, and then it pretty much started to go the exact opposite and started to go down. Why? Why would that happen in the 60s? Why would it start to fall off? What happened in the 60s? No. Yeah. Here, look at you sucker for actually communicating. They were allowed to join. So why would they, there's no reason for them to continue to be, to just be a sweetheart when they could be a full-fledged member. So popularity fell off, and then in the 90s they actually eliminated the position officially. They don't offer the jacket anymore or anything because girls just aren't interested in being the queen to the same extent that they want to be full-fledged members. So, so leading up to 1969, when they were allowed officially, it started in 1935. Alfred Vaughn proposed the subject of women being allowed full membership. So FFA hadn't even been around officially for 10 years yet. So he's already thinking, well, girls are going to benefit my chapter, and I mean FFA in general, so he's wanting to get girls involved, and he proposed it, and it was absolutely 100% quickly shot down, said no way. In fact, so strictly shot down that I won't make you read all through this, but it says that women absolutely cannot be a part, and if a chapter or a state has a girl on their roll, they will not receive any funding anymore from the National Treasury. So it was that, they were that serious. They didn't want girls to be a part of it. They would cut funding. They wouldn't help people travel to convention. You were on your own at that point. So after that, it kind of scared chapters into saying, I'm not even going to worry about it. I'll just I'll either turn a blind eye to it and pretend like I don't have girls in my chapter, or I just won't let them be a part of it. The issue really didn't get brought back up until the 37th convention in 1964. And it was brought up, I don't know exactly who brought it up, but they again said, we want to strike, this time they wanted to strike male from the Constitution. So they didn't want it to say, you know, males will do this and males will do this. They wanted to put things like we, members, them, so that it wasn't specific to boys. And I think it got seconded after a few minutes, but it got shot down. So, before I go to the next slide, another thing that was happening during the 60s that's kind of an important, the 50s, 60s that's important to this is in the 50s, World War II ended. So, during World War II, the women made up most of the workforce because the men were off fighting. And so the women were in the workforce, women were doing the jobs, and when the men came back, the women a lot got laid off because of the men being back. They got laid off. The women were not happy about it. They liked getting out and working and being a part of the workforce. And they weren't, it didn't go over well. There was a lot of revolt to the idea of I lose my job because somebody just came back. Anyways, and so they didn't want to go back to those conformed rules of I have to go and take care of kids and cook and do a normal housewife. So the 60s were a time of change. There was also the civil rights movement, and it was the same for gender. There was a big push to get women to where they could be involved in society. So with that being said, in 1967, at the 40th convention, delegates were informed of legal issues of not allowing them to do an FFA. And that's just the result of exactly what I just said. That everywhere, every organization was under strict pressure to start you couldn't be biased anymore. So they told the delegates, here's the legal issues, here's what we're facing, we're probably going to have to let women in at some point. So go back to your local levels and discuss with people at a local level, what are the benefits? Is it worth it? Do we want to do this really? So they sent them back. At the time, there was 3,300 girls in in ag education classes. So that means there was 3,300 girls taking shop classes, taking animal science classes, taking the classes, but they weren't allowed to do FFA. And I don't know if you guys talk about it at all, but there's a 3-circle model in ag education. You have your classroom, your SAE, and your FFA. Well, if you're only getting 2 parts of that 3 circles, you're missing out. And so the girls are missing a big part of learning. So it wasn't really fair to the girls to not have it, and they were losing on the education side. And so 1 year later, in '68, it was again motioned that they strike male from the Constitution, and it was quickly seconded. Like it looked good. It looked like it was going to get voted in, and then it was voted down by just a fraction. It was super close, but it got voted down again. So women still weren't allowed. But they were seeing hope on the horizon because it was close. I mean, people were starting to see it. At least at the local level, people wanted girls in. So then finally in '69, the motion was passed to strike male from the Constitution. So like I said earlier, that just meant that no more in the Constitution is it going to specify that it's only males doing this, only members, you know what I mean? It's going to say members instead of male. More than 12,000 days have passed from the first mention of allowing girls to join. Anybody want to take a couple guesses for some candy at how many years, months, and days that is?
9, 10 years.
Close. Not quite. Anybody else? Come on. All you gotta do is take a stab at it and you get a candy. What's up? 10 years? You're right about there. You're close. So actually, no, you're not. I did my math wrong for a second. You're not close. Yeah?
32 years? Something.
Close. One more guess. Here you go. Any more? One more guess? 30 years, 8 months, and 10 days, I believe is what my calculation came out to. So that's a lifetime of people saying like, hey, that's what I want women in FFA. So I mean, that's a long time. That's a long time to go by for people to be fighting for it and it to finally come through after that many years. So what came of it? Since then, women have made large impacts on FFA and ag education alike. Today, about half of FFA's members are women. Women make up approximately 50% of state leadership positions, so not only are they members, but they're participating at local and state levels and national levels, and being competitive and putting in valuable input. Women have served as convention delegates, held national offices, and many other honors. And this is just kind of an interesting little tidbit that I learned in class that I thought is pretty cool. In the years 2013 to 2016, in the nation, 1,454 females graduated from ag education, so they want to be ag teachers. And only 751 graduated. So that breaks down to 65% female, 33% male, and then there's like a 1% error where they're not exactly sure like how it broke down. So what does that mean? What does that mean for ag education as a whole with that? Just what do those numbers signify? We have a lot more women that are coming out wanting to be ag teachers. Is that good? Is that bad? Does it matter? Thoughts? We can be honest. I mean, really, do we think is it a good thing to have a lot of women? Do we want to get it more towards the middle, or? I think there's always a good happy medium, but I think it's cool that women have came back, and then now there's that many more. I mean, just since 1969, we've had big leaps and bounds, but also we have to be aware, and also now be sure that we're pushing for this is also a men's thing too. We want both. I mean, both have good input. Basically, is the main point. That's kind of what we talked about in classes. Is you don't want the scale to run away the other side either. So now I just want to talk about a few girls and women that have made groundbreaking, experiences in FFA since they've been allowed to join. So the first one I'm going to talk about is Anita Decker-Wright. She grew up on a farm in New York raising livestock. She joined local and state chapters, but at the time women couldn't join. So that's, again, this is somebody that's maybe pretending to be a niece, maybe their chapter is turning a blind eye to it and letting her join, but she's not at the national level, so she's not doing the national competitions and things like that. So in 1970, 1 year after the rule was changed, she went to national convention as newly elected state officer. And so at that convention, she was one of only 2 female delegates in attendance. So that's pretty amazing if you think about it. Women were able to take from a year's time, we were able to get multiple delegates that were females, and FFA was open to change. I mean, it was obvious it needed to happen because it worked. Since then, she competed in livestock judging, traveled to Europe to learn about the global importance of ag, and attended other conventions like down the road. She went to national convention more, and then she's also been to more learning experiences to further her education in ag. Next, I got Carlene Lindo Kruger. Who remembers who she was from the Kahoot? Who's on the board?
The first woman to win the national FFA award.
Yep, so it's the American Star Farmer Award, but yes. Oh, sorry about that. So yeah, so that's who she is. So she is actually a pretty cool story. She is a 3rd generation farmer, but her project was only 100 sows, 5 feeder calves, and 3 beef cattle. So it sounds like, I mean, that's a lot of sows, but the guys that she was going up against, one of them had 500 feeder calves. So in relation, it was a really small project compared to what she was competing against. So with that being said, with it being a really small project, she didn't expect to be a competitor. She was excited to compete, and she was excited to be there and in it, but she didn't plan on winning anything. But then she got told she was in the top 4, and she's ecstatic and thought, oh, it can't get much better than this. And then she was informed she'd won it. And that's a quote from her: "Never in my wildest dreams did I expect to win." A girl had never done it. She didn't think she had a good enough project to do it anyways, but she did. So she was in 2002 is when she won it, and she was the first female to receive that award. The victory since then has been called the last hurdle women had to overcome in FFA. It was the last thing that a woman hadn't really won or done or been in that position. So that was a big thing. So since then, she now is a livestock judging coach at a school in Wisconsin. That's what she did when she competed. She was on a judging team, so that's kind of her thing. So she's continued to do that, still involved with FFA, and she continues to farm and share her passion for ag with her kids. This is the last girl I want to talk about. Does anybody know who she is? This one, she's pretty relevant to our time.
She's on the national team.
Yep. So she was the 2017 president. So we should, depending how long you've been around, should have seen her at some point. So her name's Brianna Holberg. She's from Lodi, California. She claims to have only signed up for FFA simply because, she was a good student and had good grades, but she wanted a better GPA. So she only joined it because she thought that it'd be an easy A. She got into the ag classes, easy A, get her GPA up. She ended up falling in love with FFA, and ended up serving as her chapter president, as an officer, and also as a section president, because she liked it so much. That's what she was doing. And then in 2017, she became the first African American female to serve as the president of the National FFA organization, which is a big step because we had women at some point and we had African Americans at some point, which were minorities for our FFA, but now we've taken them both and she broke through that barrier of not having that. So she told a little story in the New Horizons magazine. She talked about when she was the president, she went around and spoke to high school kids And at one particular school, the class was primarily African American, and so she was speaking to a lot of kids that didn't feel like they had a relevant part in the organization. So she talks about how she did it, and it was just a normal speech, did her thing, but at the end, a girl came up to her and was crying, just emotional, really emotional, and told her, like, I never would have thought that as a girl and as an African American I would ever have the opportunity, but now I see you didn't have any intention of doing this, and yet you are doing it, and you did it, and so that gives me, the confidence that it can be done, I can do it. So anyway, so that was a pretty humbling experience for her to know that she's a front runner, a leader for that accomplishment for people down the road. Okay, quick review, easy way to get some candy. Gonna go over what we talked about. So what year were women officially allowed? Okay, good job. How were some ways that women got around the rules prior to the change?
Sweethearts.
Yep. Another one?
So there were either nieces and nephews, or nieces and daughters.
Yep. Pretended like they weren't they weren't members, but they were related to advisors. How long did it take? 2 people can get candy on this one. How long did it take for women from the first mention to the actual rule change?
Like 30 years?
30 years, I'll accept that. Now how many individual days? 12,000 days. You were going for it. Okay, let's see. Last one. What are some of the accomplishments women have made since 1969?
These leaders,
They've been leaders specifically?
president.
There you go. What else? Come on, I talked about 3. That's only 1.
First American Star Flag.
There you go. 1 more. This is the last thing we talked about. Come on, guys. It's for a Tootsie-Roll. It's a good one, too. It's the lime one. Yep. First African American female. That's right. All right. Has anybody got any questions? Anything that's just burning in your deep down in your soul to ask me about women in FFA? No? All right. Thank you guys for letting me teach you about women in FFA. There's my resources, more for my teacher, but if you guys want to read more about it, go ahead and have a look. So, thank you.